Hi, today we're going to take a look at one of the smallest E-mount prime autofocus lenses for Sony. This is the 19mm f2.8 lens by Sigma, so let's take a look. More or less at the same time that we got the Sony A6300, which we just reviewed here on LensVid, just before Photokina 2016, we also got two Sigma E-mount lenses, the 19mm f2.8 and the 30mm f1.4. Today we are going to take a look at the first of these two lenses. One of the biggest advantages of mirrorless cameras is the size, having a compact camera that you can take anywhere with you. The problem is that if your lenses are still big and heavy, you lose this advantage. This is why Sigma's current E-mount line of lenses, called DN, is so interesting. It offers several very compact lenses with fast apertures with a nice extra bonus of being extremely affordable. The question, of course, is, can Sigma make a compact affordable lens that will actually perform? Well, this is the question that we are going to answer in this video. The build quality of the Sigma 19mm is pretty good and actually kind of surprising when you think of how inexpensive this lens is, although Sigma does include it in the Art series. The design of the lens is super simple. It has no switches and only a single ring, which we shall discuss in a second. Worth mentioning is that this lens does make a little noise when it is shaken, which we don't think affects the performance in any way, but it's still pretty bizarre. We don't really think that we can categorize this lens as a pancake lens, but it is as close to one as can possibly be at a length of under 5 centimeters or 2 inches and with a laughable weight of under 180 grams or 6.3 ounces. As we have mentioned, the Sigma 19mm has a single ring for focusing. What is strange about this ring is that it is completely smooth. Initially, we thought that it is going to be hard to work with, but we actually got used to it. Just like the 30mm Sigma lens for E-mount, this lens has a fly-by-wire style mechanism, which means that it has no hard lock when you turn it, and you can basically turn it endlessly. We would actually prefer a more traditional mechanism, but we guess that this is simpler and less expensive to make this type of mechanism, and it seems to work fine. The lens comes with a small plastic hood, but it seems to do the job, or at the very least give some extra protection to the rather tiny front element. As for the autofocus, the lens seems to focus rather quickly and we didn't have any perceived problems with the focus speed or accuracy. The lens is extremely sharp in the center wide open, as you can see from our test images. The corners are a bit less sharp wide open, but if you close the aperture by about one stop to f4, you get good sharpness, and at f5.6 you get very good sharpness. We encounter very little chromatic aberration with this lens, and Sony cameras know how to deal with them anyway. We also didn't encounter any significant flare with the lens. As for vignette, with our A6300 vignette auto correction off, you can see that wide open there are some darkening in the corners. However, the auto correction on Sony cameras typically work pretty good, although you will get a bit higher ISO in the corners. We are actually pretty surprised to see the barrel distortion test for this lens. Either the lens is distortion free or Sony has some autocorrect that we didn't find, but there is literally no distortion with this image, which seems pretty strange for a 19mm lens. As for the bokeh, light circle seems nice and round wide open with this lens, and if you are close enough to your subject and it is far away from the background, you will get decent separation wide open, although this is still only an f2.8 lens on APS-C. So let's try and sum this quick look at the Sigma 19mm f2.8 lens for E-mount cameras. Sigma seems to really be able to pull this one off. The lens is small, light, inexpensive, relatively well made and has good performance, although we have to admit that in general the characteristics of this lens are not extremely challenging. Well, with all this going for it, is there really any reason for Sony APS-C E-mount users not to get this lens? The only reason that we can think about is the need for this particular focal length. 19mm is not especially wide on APS-C, but at the same time it isn't ideal for portraits either, unless you're going to do a lot of group photos. So why would you buy this lens? Well, it is a compact lens for landscape or general urban shooting. It can be pretty useful, and you can even take some close-up photos with this, although this is definitely not a dedicated macro lens. At the end of the day, and if this focal length is right for you, this lens is just a steal, and we can definitely highly recommend it. So this was our look at the Sigma 19mm f2.8 lens. You can read the full review on lensvid.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Next time we're going to take a look at its longer sister, the 30mm f1.4 lens for E-mount by Sigma. See you next time.